So here we go. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming to our Drop the Leash Facebook Live on this gloomy Thursday morning. My name is Laura Hunter. I'm here with Celeste Gagnon, and together we teach classes at Drop the Leash Dog Training. So this morning, I thought we would talk about getting your dog, well, we're trying to think of how to say this, getting your dog out in the world, but in a specific sense, possibly traveling with your dog or visiting in other homes with your dog. And a couple of reasons I came up with this. I think people now that, restrictions have lifted and it's the weather is nicer and Thanksgiving is coming. I think people are starting to think about getting out in the world with their dogs, maybe taking them places. And what triggered it was the fact that we actually took a mini vacation this week, 3 whole days, and we took one of my dogs with us. So we took my oldest dog, Annie, who is 10 years old. We didn't want to leave her at home with the sitter because she's just had knee surgery and we wanted to be able to keep an eye on her. And it was an interesting 3 days because not only did I learn things about how to handle my dog, I got to watch a lot of other people out in the world with their dogs. And I think for the most part, a lot of people are really struggling out there with what to do with all of these overexcited dogs who are in new situations. So we went on a trip to Manitoulin Island for 3 days. Manitoulin Island itself was pretty uneventful, but Annie, the ferry ride was more than made up for that. But I was a little concerned because Annie hasn't really been off the farm in at least 3 or 4 years, other than to go to the vets and have surgery on her knees. And she is, as you know, Celeste, she is a pretty high-strung dog that stresses easily and gets overexcited if you take a deep breath. So I thought this would be super interesting. So it actually worked out pretty well. I was actually, because I was texting you while I was there, and I was actually quite surprised at how well we managed to do it. But I also now realize there are lots of reasons why, and that's what we want to talk about today, so we can send other people some tips to survive. It was going to be her first time. We weren't worried about the car ride because she's an amazing car dog. But I knew we were going on the big ferry for 2 hours, and I knew the big ferry was going to be packed, and I know that we were going to be staying in a motel room for the first time. And of course, Annie barks at her own imagination here at home, and I thought, oh my God, am I going to have to stay up all night in the car with her, because she's barking in the motel room. So I was a little stressed about the whole thing. And then I sent you a text from the parking lot of the ferry going, oh my God, it's working. So the number one thing that I learned about Annie and I was that actually about what we do here is that the games program we have here actually works. It's good to know, right?
We tested it finally.
People. But I hadn't for years had a chance to actually use it out in the world. Because we never got off the farm, so Rosie's the demo dog in class and my dogs are, good around the farm, but I didn't know how well they actually worked out in the world. So I was really happy to be able to say that. But it wasn't the only thing that helped us be successful. And I watched a lot of people, even in the parking lot of the ferry, you have to sit there for an hour in line. It's like a whole military operation because they have all these hundreds of cars getting on. There were a lot of people walking around the parking lots with really stressed dogs, even the little tiny ones. People were carrying them because they were all lunging and barking. And but even when they were carrying them, they were out of their minds and they were barking and people didn't know what to do. And once we all got on the ferry and unloaded from the cars, I don't know if anybody's ever done this, there were tons and tons of people crowded into spaces. And because of her knee, we had to take an elevator, and we had to get on this elevator, which was about the size of my kitchen table here with like 3 other people, and she'd never been on an elevator. She was good. She was good. But I saw a lot of dogs lunging and barking, and lots of extended leashes. Oh my gosh. And tons of kids, and just tons of people. So it was really an interesting experience being on that ferry. But as I said, the games did work really well. And so, like, the number one tip I have to give to people is, we are plugging our games program a little bit, but even if you're not going to come to our games program, you can't just take your dog out on something like that without any training preparation, I don't think. So your dog does need some kind of training. They do need some alternative behavior, or even a few alternative behaviors that they can engage in that helps them ignore or cope with new environments. And preferably some sort of behavior that they enjoy, that's easy for them and easy for you to reinforce. So, I found Annie had 3 games that worked out there. People listening might not know what we're talking about, but definitely Magic Hand, where we're dropping the food out of our hand. The 1, 2, 3 game for loose leash walking, focus on you, and look at that, where we mark yes and the dog turns and engages back to us. So all of those are easy behaviors. They're behaviors where she wasn't required to sit and look at all of these distractions that were happening. They're things that we have practiced a lot around the farm. Even though I haven't been able to get out in the world and practice a lot, we practice those at the vet office all the time. And we've practiced them on the farm, in the forest, when people come up the driveway, to the point where, like your dogs, all of these behaviors are totally automatic in our dogs now. It's like a muscle memory thing. When they hear the cue, they just, pop into action. So you don't need a tremendous amount of training to be out in the world. Your dog doesn't need to heel beside you. They don't have to, although it was a good thing to have a stay, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But they do need to have a couple of behaviors that are alternative to just lunging and barking at the end of the leash. And honestly, I don't think sit is one of those. And I know that everybody's default is to go ask your dog to sit when they're overexcited. But I'm not sure I saw one dog, and there were a ton of dogs on that ferry. I didn't see one dog that would have been able to sit in the state they were in.
No, I wouldn't think so either.
No, I think people make the mistake of thinking if they have a dog that just sits, they'll be able to. And you know what? Maybe if you have a really calm, chilled dog, it is possible. I don't know. Possibly Rosie could do it, or could at least do place between my feet.
I was going to say place would be more realistic.
Yeah, Annie can't do place because with her surgery, it's a bit difficult physically for her at this point to get between my feet and drop into a down.
Yeah.
The only dog I saw on the ferry that was really calm and chilled, I suspect, lives on the island, so travels back and forth a lot, and was wearing a prong collar. Not promoting prong collars here, people, but it could have been one factor in that. So Annie's got a couple of behaviors. They work great. Also, an ability, we took her mat with us, an ability to hold position on a mat. Actually, she can hold position in a stand too. We work the daylights out of that because sit doesn't work for her with her leg. And she was really good at holding the stand if I needed her. We were practicing on the outside deck, and she was at one end of the ship and I was halfway up, and she was holding it. So definitely ability to hold a position, but otherwise just a couple of behaviors that get your dog to focus back on you would probably get most people through in terms of training. In terms of training, there's lots of other factors that I want to go through here, but in terms of training, you don't have to have an obedience champion to take your dog out in the world. Just something that will get them to engage on you. And the ones that we use here, the ones that I was using, were great because I could play them unobtrusively. You know, whether a couple people in the ferry lineup that were wondering why I kept continuously counting to 3, but that's okay. You know, I didn't care. But it was stuff that was easy. She could do at my side, so it worked. It was pretty good actually. Along with that, I also think equipment is a factor. I saw a lot of dogs on back harnesses and extended leashes, which was life-threatening when everybody's lining up to get back to their cars. You know,
sure.
Yeah, we had a Jack Russell that was like 5 dogs down, but on the extended leash ended up right beside us. So it wasn't really working. So, you know, if you're going to take your dog out, you know, anywhere new in the world, don't put them on an extended leash. Don't have them on a back harness, which, if people don't know, allows your dog to pull and encourages your dog to pull. So I actually, a few times when it was really crowded, put Annie on, like we use double ring harnesses here, front clip, back clip.
Yeah.
I actually double clipped her a couple of times to keep her, just so I could handle her more effectively if something came at her. You know, I wanted to be able to pull her out of the way. She wasn't going to be a problem that way. And, you know, what you need to do is practice those behaviors. You know, you can't just, you know, that's what we always say, practice for the situation, not in the situation. So, you know, if you want to get your dog out in the world, you know, in a big way, you need to practice at home. You need to practice over specific situations. You can't just take those behaviors out there and expect those auto responses. And I was getting pretty auto responses from her, so it was good. And of course, tons and tons of high value food reinforcers, which you would think I wouldn't have to be mentioning, but we know when people come to games class, they often run out of food in half an hour.
Yeah.
So definitely what I did was I didn't even bother taking her regular kibble. I took the small breed version of her kibble, so I could use it as a reinforcer during the day in quiet areas. And I took, I just bought a bag of Ziwi Peaks, and it was tripe and lamb, which is super, super high value. And that's what she ate for almost 3 days, which is fine. I didn't care. It's not a regular meal. I couldn't afford it. But for that trip, and for anybody who doesn't know, Ziwi Peaks are little tiny flat squares about the size of your first fingernail. And really easy to carry, no mess, no disintegration, nothing. So it was super. It was a really good thing to have, and dogs really like that lemon tripe.
Mm-hmm.
You just close your eyes and clench your teeth at the price of the bag, but that's okay. It was worth it because it was a holiday.
Yeah.
So
if you compare it to a treat bag, though, in
Yeah.
the end,
yeah,
it's worth
exactly.
it.
Exactly. We still
Yeah.
have tons and tons of it left over.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, on the other sort of to reverse this, and the reason I'm reversing this is because I have a couple of students, not in the games program, but in one of our other programs, who came to me this week and said, oh my gosh, we're having so much trouble with our dog out in the world because they're not paying attention to us. They want to go to other people and we don't know what to do about it. And I said, well, what are you doing about it? And they said, well, we're just offering more and more and higher value food for them, the dog to stay with us. But they're not asking the dog to do anything for the food, which means the dog has no alternative behavior to take their attention off of. And these are friendly dogs. They just want to, they're overly friendly. They just want to go greet everybody.
Yeah.
So you do have to take both out in the world. You have to take high value reinforcers, and you have to take some easy, simple training or activities or games that your dog can do. You know, so you do need to pair them up. Yeah. So just a couple of other tips that were some that I knew, some that I learned. We did take a really easy trip, even though it was boring. I figured, I didn't know it was going to be that. It wasn't boring. We like to drive around and look at stuff. But it was quieter than I actually expected it to be. But we deliberately went in September. I wouldn't, you know, necessarily go in the summer. So it was off season. There weren't huge crowds around other than the ferry, and no, there weren't really many crowds around. So we were always able to provide a quiet spot for her. It wasn't hot, which is a huge factor for most dogs. And so it was good for us because, you know, if we wanted to go in and order lunch or run into a place and browse around, we could leave her in the car or the truck, and she wasn't going to get too hot. And it was short because, well, it was short because I didn't want to take a lot of time off work, but it was also a good amount of time for her. First night she was, well, everybody was really unsettled, sleeping in a strange room. Second night, everybody was fine. So it gave her a chance to acclimatize. And a lot of it was in the car, but we planned that because we know she loves the car. If you've got a great car dog, that's a good idea. If you don't have a great car dog, you know, you might want to go stay somewhere and just take short trips. And the thing is, we went where none of us really, there wasn't a lot to do. There wasn't a lot that we wanted to go see or do. So, you know, there weren't a lot of activities that we booked. And, you know, that was okay because I didn't want to go to a lot of different places and look at stuff. I wanted to just sort of hang out with my dog and help her out. You know, the other thing too is when I booked, I looked very carefully at where we were staying. We didn't have a lot of choice. There was only one motel on the island that was dog friendly. Fortunately, it was nice. But if there hadn't been, I would have gone somewhere else. It was great because there were trails around. It was a really small place. It was supposedly a town, but it only had like 2 streets. And there was a beautiful boardwalk along Lake Huron there. And I looked at that and I thought, this is great. You know, I can walk her along that 3, 4, 5 times a day. That's perfect. So you really do, when you're booking places, want to make sure that there's something there for your dog, especially to decompress, you know, if you're going other places.
Yeah.
And as I said, you know, if you're working your way up to going on, you know, maybe a bigger holiday or a more extended holiday, you want to take a short one, even just for a day. You know, we go out lots with Annie in the car for the day, and we get her out and walk around places. So, you know, it wasn't a big thing to jump up to a couple of days. But when we went, she was our priority. Because this, you know, someday we'll go on a longer trip and we plan to do it. We take her with us because now we know she was fine for the 3 days. Yeah. But definitely because this was sort of a practice run, a bit of a training run to see how everything worked, she was our priority. But I think your dog has to be your priority on any vacation. You know, I think people have to realize that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like taking a toddler. You're going to drag them sightseeing all day. How well is that going to go?
Yeah.
It's the same with your dog. So you do have to find something throughout the day that your dog's going to be in it for, you know, and be ready to change plans if that's going to benefit your dog. So yesterday we were going to go back on the ferry, but it was really cold. It was windy. It was pouring rain. And on the ferry, they usually have all the dogs on the outside decks, which is great because I was walking her up and down doing training stuff with her, and people were walking around with their dogs. But we all would have had to have been inside yesterday. And I thought, oh my God, I don't want to be inside with all those dogs and all those people and deal with her for, you know, 2 hours trying to, you know, make sure she's engaged with me. So we drove home instead, you know, which was fine. You know, we're happy to make that change. So you have to be flexible, and you have to know you might have some other options when you're going somewhere.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, all of these ideas of being flexible and planning things with your dog in mind will save you disappointment and frustration too. If you go on a vacation and you're expecting a certain thing, taking all that into consideration, you're not going to have a good time.
No. And I saw lots of people on the ferry who were really stressed because their dogs were stressed. And I saw one lady hiding in what looked like the boiler room. I walked past. She was hiding behind some sort of big furnace or something. Engine, I don't know. She wasn't coming out. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's hard.
Yeah.
So, I think the thing is just you have to, and everybody, even if you're thinking, oh my God, I don't want to have to train my dog to go on a trip, we just want to go, we want to be free, we want, let's play it by ear. They are like toddlers. You can't really play it by ear.
No.
You can't always wing it. Maybe you could. Maybe there are some dogs that are just so good out in the world. I know there's a couple, Lori and Kevin on Monday night. They travel a lot with Finley.
Yeah.
And Finley goes to really nice hotels and stuff like that. She's a golden retriever. She's older and she's great. Like nothing bothers her.
Yeah. So two things there. One, yes, there are those rare dogs that are just perfect at everything socially.
Yeah.
And two, she travels a lot.
Yes.
So the habit, and there is not that new, what
Yeah,
do I do in this situation kind of thing there.
yeah, and she's pretty chilled. She's pretty
Yeah.
chilled. But even with my own dogs, I know that if we took Rosie, it would be so much easier.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't really give a hoot about anything. And I will confess right here and now, last year when we took her canoeing, other than teaching her to wear the life jacket, I pretty much just threw her in the canoe and we went off on a canoe trip.
Yeah.
And I'll do the same thing this year. Like she just rolls with the punches.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of dogs there who looked like they weren't going to roll with whatever was happening. So, it depends on what you've got. And even if you've got like an Annie, it's not like I trained like we were going on running a marathon or anything. All of these skills or these little games that we play, I just play them all the time here in real life because we use them here. So, as I said, 2 or 3 things that just get your dog engaged with you. That's all you really need to learn. That's all your dog needs to learn. And mat work. Mat work is super important, I think.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. But, you just have to remember practice for the situation, not in the situation. And I felt much more confident knowing that we've taken her on some day trips and that all of that stuff was working in the parking lot. So the parking lot was a good place to get her settled in for that ferry ride because it was just a parking lot and there was tons of space in it, so we kind of set the tone there. So yeah, so if you're gonna get your dog out in the world, just prepare. Take equipment that helps you keep them under control in some situations. Take tons and tons and tons of high value reinforcers. Don't get hung up on, oh well, they're eating too much for 2 days. People eat too much on their holidays too. We can come back and fix that.
That's true.
Yeah. She ate. I ate way too much pizza, and she ate way too many Ziwi peaks. And sort of plan ahead. Look at where you're going. See if it's suitable. Talk to the people. We emailed the people at the motel to make sure it was going to be okay, and be prepared to make your dog a priority and change plans if you need to. Have a plan B, and it's workable. If it's workable with Annie, I think it's workable with most dogs.
Yeah,
so.
I'd agree.
Yeah. So, but I was really excited to actually play the games in the real world and know that they work. I can tell everybody in games classes on Sunday, this stuff really works. Sure.
It is. They are very practical and it's not hard. That's the thing.
No, none of it's hard. None of it's hard.
Yeah.
You just want to do a lot of it and build it into your daily life so it doesn't seem like a training trick to your dog. I think that's part of the trick too, is that our dogs just play this stuff everywhere. So it's part of their life. So when they go to a new location, I know dogs have trouble generalizing from one location to the other, but I think you can make up for that a little bit just by building it into everything you do with them.
Yeah.
And so it's not a huge deal. It just gets you a really attentive, fairly calm, polite dog everywhere you go.
Yeah. So. And you're not asking them to do difficult things either.
No.
So it's not like, I know some people when they get out there, they have the the urge to show off what their dog can do. That's
Oh,
not
God,
the time, that's not the time you want to do that.
No, our goal was to be as unobtrusive as possible.
Yes, you just do the simple things that
Yes.
work and
Yeah.
and
People,
engage your dog.
yeah, definitely. The screaming Yorkie was getting way more attention from us than the people in the cars. So yeah, so that was my experience out in the world, and it is doable if you just prepare and do a little practice and train and take everything you need with you. It's not that hard. So I'm going to turn this over to you, because what we want to talk about also is that people may want to take their dogs and visit relatives or friends and possibly stay over at their houses on Thanksgiving. I can't envision ever wanting to take my dogs to somebody else's house. I usually like to leave them here and go by myself. But you have to do it because you go visit family and you don't want to leave your dogs at home.
All my family is too far away, so it's
So I have no idea. I really don't know because I've never done it. So what do you do? What's your secret?
My secret.
What's your survival secret?
my secret is have some wine while you're there. No, honestly, a lot of the stuff is similar to what you said. I mean, it's being prepared, practicing games in everyday situations at home, when you're going for a walk, when you're in the training field, when you're just about anywhere, so they're familiar with it. I use the same games as you. I like the orientation game. Whenever I get anywhere new, that's the first thing, because that to me is the hands down the easiest thing to do with them, and it really kind of just gets them in the mood to, oh, we're going to work, or we're going to do this, and they forget everything else. So I have two scenarios, because I have my family that I visit who have no dogs and are not dog people, have never had dogs. So when I bring my two high drive dogs over, it's a bit of an event. They also all have cats, which is that added little fun detail. When you go to somebody else's house in that scenario, you have to be considerate of their feelings and their house and everything else as well. Like, it's not just about you and your dogs at this point. So boundaries for me is important. I have an X pen that I bring, so they can't wander around the whole house. They have like whatever room I'm in, and maybe the hallway, or maybe the first floor if they've earned that after a while of being there. I do a lot of boundary I do a lot of boundary training. So they have I bring a blanket or a mat or something, and they do a lot of work on that as well. We do a lot of orientation game when we first get there, so that they know to stay with me. They don't kind of wander off. I try to keep them away from everybody. They're always super excited to see my parents, because my mom equals treats, and my dad, for some reason, they just love they love just saying hi to him, and in the most enthusiastic way. So they're on leash for a little while too. And then they've earned, okay, hang on, I'm going to have a delivery in 2 seconds. Then they've earned the privilege of not being on leash, but then they have the X-Pen area blocked off, so they have to stay with me. And it's going to get loud in here in a second, so I don't know if you're going to take over with something.
Take over if you have to go get that delivery.
Yeah, I will be right back.
Yeah, but I think I can see where the mats would be the boundary training. If people don't know what we mean by boundary training, it's just simply staying on mats.
Yeah.
That worked for Annie really well on the ferry, because we just plunked her down in the middle of the deck outside, and people walked past her constantly, and she didn't care, because she had her mats, and I could see that working in the house as well. So I think You know, even when people come to my house, I can use mat training to keep the dogs on the mat so they're not jumping on everybody. So for everybody out there, I think that if you're looking to take your dog, you know, anywhere in the world, if you can build massive value for your dog wanting to be on a mat. And that's what we do that might be a little bit different. We heavily reinforce our dogs for being on mats, especially in the beginning, to the point where if we put a mat on the ground, our dogs just want naturally to get on it and stay on it. And I still do reinforce them for being on a mat in high value, high distraction situations. So Annie was on her mat, she was calm, but she was still getting reinforced for it because we were in a new place. And I know that it was more of an effort for her to stay calm on the mat. But definitely, if you have a dog who can be on a mat, it also adds a level of security for them in any situation, because even when the situations change or a new environment, there's new distractions, the one thing that stays the same is the mat. So it's something that they can always depend on. So I was just saying, Celeste, to all the invisible people out there, that the one thing about mats is that no matter how you change environments, if dogs have value and they're happy to stay on mats, it does help them feel more comfortable, more secure, because it's one thing they can depend on that's the same over every situation. Whoop, I can't hear you.
There you go. Sorry, I forgot to unmute.
Yeah,
So, 'cause it's
you know,
familiar.
like, to me, that's one of the biggest skills to work on with your dog if you're going to take them anywhere in the world.
Yeah, I agree.
So you have to take them out a lot, because even if they know people whose houses they're going to, it must be, having new people in a small environment must, like, I know your dogs, they would, well, Gimli would just be the party puppy like Rosie, but I think Penny would get stressed like Annie does.
I feel like I feel like I need to give them a lot of breaks.
Yeah.
So I go for a lot of walks, or even just pee breaks and a quick sniff around the block kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm lucky that like my parents enjoy going for walks too, so we just go for a lot of walks when I visit, and that's fine.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. So that's just part of our visit. It always has been.
Actually, that's a really good idea. If you were going to somebody's house where your dogs didn't know the people,
yes,
you could take them for a walk first, where they could get to know them outside in a bigger area, which is less stressful.
It is less stressful. Yeah, instead of being confined face to face. So that brings me to my other situation.
Okay.
Where on my husband's side of the family, everybody has a dog or more than one dog. So and many children. So when we go there, it's pretty crazy, like in a fun way, but it's crazy. And I have a dog who, I mean, she's kind of used to them, so she's not reactive like she is to stranger dogs. But every time I go, it's still like I still have that what's going to happen this time kind of situation, right? So what I do there every single time is we meet them in the driveway and we go for a walk. So that all the dogs can be together, but they're just walking parallel. There's no play. Yeah. And then we go back to the backyard, and at that point, they've been hanging out for like 45 minutes or so, and they're usually fine. Yeah,
that's a good idea. Yeah.
So even though I know all the dogs are friendly, and I know Penny knows them and she can tolerate them, and they kind of read her signals and know not to engage her too much, she just kind of watches and supervises. I still like to go for a walk first, just because it's usually been like a couple months or since we've seen them last, so just to kind of refresh their memory and just kind of, I don't know. To me, it's easier because when we go for our walks, they're walking together, but they're not playing. So there isn't that expectation, and they also just sniff around a lot, so she can like decompress and do her own thing.
And dogs are meant to move. Like
Yeah.
dogs deal better with life if they can move around,
Yeah.
so, rather than come into a house and have to get
Face to
down
face.
and stay on a mat. I found even on that ferry boat, Annie was good on her mat for a while, but then she kind of started looking at me. So we got up and walked up and down the aisle, and I did some of the games while we were moving.
Yeah.
Totally settled her down there as well. So I think people forget how valuable it can be just for your dog to take a few minutes, go for a walk, even as you said, sniff to decompress. We do that out in the field in the classes.
Yeah.
You know, take your dog around the field, let them reset their brain before we go back at it again. And everybody on the ferry was walking too with their dogs. You know, we just kept walking. Yeah.
And as for games, when I go on that walk when I first arrive, because all the dogs have just seen each other on the driveway and they're all like, hey, you know, Penny is not the dog that will run to other dogs and want to play with them, but my sister-in-law's dogs are. They're super friendly and they just want to play with everybody. So she'll walk ahead a little bit and I will play some games with Penny. I'll do 1, 2, 3. I'll do a little bit of orientation game. And at that point, she's like, okay, other dogs there, but I don't have to pay attention to them. I can play these games instead.
Yeah.
You know, so it kind of gives her that permission and relief of not having to play and engage, because their play styles are totally different. She has no interest in that.
Yeah. And I remember when we were first getting into that 1, 2, 3 game, which is from Control and Leash, Leslie McDivitt. I remember listening to Leslie McDivitt talk about that game and how great it was, because no matter what else is going on in the world, your dog can follow that simple repetitive pattern.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that one. So that's when I do. That's when I do when I meet the other dogs. That's when I do on the first couple of walks when I walk with my family. Because she's just like, this is a new path. There's new people with me. This is like so exciting. And, you know, she's not quite sure what to do with herself.
Yeah.
So
how do
we
you
do that.
How do you do with the kids? What do you do with the kids?
Oh, okay. So the kids are, I mean, the ones on the side that has a lot of children are used to dogs because they're around them all the time. So they kind of ignore everybody. The children ignore the dogs, which is nice. On my side, I have a nephew who's a little bit, he's a little bit more tentative around dogs because he's not raised with them. He doesn't understand. And Penny's big and Gimli's crazy. So I understand with that. So I have, I practice turn and goes a lot with the dogs when we're around my family. They know now not to really go to him. They let him come to them. When Penny's laying down and completely conked out is when he will come pet her.
Yeah.
But I taught him the orientation game. And he throws the treats behind her so that he's playing with her, but she's not coming closer. So he's actually super happy because he's feeding the animal.
Yeah.
But she's not coming closer and she's totally happy because she's getting treats.
Yeah, that's the perfect thing to do.
Yeah. So, you know, he's tiny, he's little, and he's just tossing treats or kibbles behind Penny and they're having a great time and they're not coming close.
Yeah.
So there's no fear. Yeah. And Penny gets to play her games.
Yeah, I don't know why something you said triggered a memory, because my dogs used to work with our kids in the camp programs because we ran programs for kids with special needs. And a lot of our kids used to be really worried about the dogs coming up to them.
Yeah.
So what we did was I taught all 3 of them to target Post-it notes. And then we would put Post-it notes on the kids' pants on their knees. So the dogs would come up and target the Post-it note and then come back to me. So they just came in, touched and went, right?
That's fun.
It's sort of the same idea in that dog is coming, but the dog is leaving, or the dog doesn't have to get that close to me. Yeah. The orientation game was easier, but I didn't know about that back then.
Yeah.
So all we had were Post-it notes and targeting. So same thing. But yeah, that's a good idea. But I remember that you were stressed about heading out there because there were dogs and kids and it was all so new.
Well, the last time we talked is because there was there was now a new dog and a
Yeah.
puppy that was not really a tiny puppy anymore, and they had never met. And she's a female puppy, and Penny's usually, all the other dogs are boys. So
Yeah.
I've never had an issue with her and males, but I've never experienced her in females, so I wasn't sure. But yeah,
Yeah.
that day ended up being pretty good. I mean, I left Gimli at home, so I only had one dog to handle, which I think was a good decision. But oh, you're back. You're good. No,
Oh.
you're back.
I had no idea that everything in the house just kind of went. Well, we had power outages because of the storm, right?
Yeah.
Well, fortunately, it just came back, and I typed back in. Sorry, Celeste.
That's okay.
Disappear.
No, I was just saying that it did end up going well because I think because I only brought the one, I only brought Penny.
Yeah.
So again, that to me is like, in a way, you know, knowing your limits and your dog's limits and working within them a little bit.
Yes. So that's an interesting question, because I was thinking about what we were doing, and if there were times when I wouldn't take a dog on a trip with me, and definitely I wouldn't take them, you know, in the height of the summer because it would be too hot. I probably wouldn't take them to places where I wanted to, you know, go in and look at a lot of things. I probably wouldn't take them for super long trips. You know, there are times when I just wouldn't take my dogs on certain places and at certain times of the year. Are there situations where you would leave your dogs at home rather than take them, you know, to somebody's house?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So if I knew there would be a lot of people or maybe a lot of food, I might find a way to leave them at home. I think that, I mean, Penny is a notorious counter surfer.
Yeah.
She's got some crazy ninja skills when it comes to it. So even when think I've managed a situation, she'll surprise me. My in-laws, 2 Christmases in a row, she's eaten all the Brussels sprouts because she's crazy. She loves Brussels sprouts.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law's management idea for that is she makes an extra platter of Brussels sprouts now for Penny.
Oh my gosh. No accounting for taste, Penny, honestly. And probably if there were too many people attending the event.
If it's a situation or where you're going to have to really be focused on people, I wouldn't bother bringing the dogs.
Yeah.
Because I know that if I have to be super social and in charge of something, then I'm not going to be able to be in charge of her.
Yeah. Yeah. And
right?
I think that is one of the biggest points is that whether you're going on a trip or whether you're going to somebody's house or taking your dog out in the world, if you can't give them attention, leave them at home, because they just don't have the coping. Well, again, some dogs, you know, maybe, certainly, you know, I'm thinking of Andrew's lab Finn, who can probably go anywhere and just park himself. But my dogs wouldn't have the skills to cope. Well,
no.
You know,
and I mean, if you're stuck and you bring a crate with you, because I've done that, where I know that I'm going to my parents' house and then we are going to an event from there and then coming back, then I'll bring crates and the dogs will be in their crates. I still don't like to do it for too long because it's not their home, it's not their. So even though the crate is familiar, it's not. I'm sure it's stressful for them anyway.
Yeah.
But I mean, sometimes you have no real options, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we almost wished we had considered a crate when we took Annie, because she couldn't settle that first night. And we thought, well, she probably might have settled in her crate.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, if you can take a crate, that's a really good idea. I might throw a crate in the car the next time and And normally we wouldn't care. She would just fine. But the floors of the room were just bare wood. And
Oh,
so because of her leg surgery, she kept getting stuck places. So we were up and down all that night. Of course, wherever I put her mats and her pads, she'd go and sleep somewhere else, right? And so,
yeah,
Brett she got stuck under the bed at one point, and Brett had to, pull her out, and I had to go lift her a few times. So, crates are like mats, and that our dogs are all pretty secure in their crates. So
Yeah.
it is another good tool to take along if your dog is secure in it, and if
Yeah.
they're used to being in it. Yeah. So, it's just planning, and again, realizing your dog can't cope unless you're there to help them,
Yeah.
and just having some good disengagement skills or some good focus and attention skills, and it's totally doable. I think
Yeah.
it's really doable.
Yeah. And respecting where you are.
Yes. Yes.
Because that's important. It's not your house.
We forgot poop bags. Can you believe it? But like, I live on a farm. I don't have to pick up the poop in a bag. We forgot
That's
poop
true.
bags. So we're rummaging through all our pockets and stuff looking for plastic bags. We finally found a few somewhere, but I was so mortified that I forgot poop bags.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
big
Well,
things.
easy. Yeah. Little things that you don't necessarily.
Yeah, but it's like everything in life. You forget one little thing, and then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And the other thing is, the more you do it, the easier it's going to get.
Yeah. We'll do it again. We'll do the same sort of trip that we did again. I know you'll go and visit your family again, Thanksgiving, whatever. So, it's just do it at the level at which your dog can be successful, and prepare them as much as possible.
Yeah, and like you were saying about short trips or day trips, you could do the same for visiting people. If you have a neighbor, go visit them for an hour, and then come home and see what kinds of stuff you need to prepare for a longer trip.
Now, see, I immediately had a different thought in that, wow, if somebody invited us over and I didn't want to stay, I could bring my dog and say, I can only stay half an hour, I have to go home, because, you know how few social skills I have. So it would be perfect.
That's true.
Yeah, but you're right. Just, you always, again, it's just really, as in anything we do with dogs, you work at the level at which the dog can be successful. Just move it forward in little increments, and you always you practice for the situation, not in the situation.
Right.
So if you keep those two things in mind, pretty much anything with dogs can work in the long run.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I don't have anything more to add. Do you have anything more to add?
No. Michelle made a funny comment though.
Who?
Michelle Cumming.
Yes.
She says she only brings the good dog.
She has 4. Which one is that?
I have no idea, but it's funny.
And what does she do with the other 3? I hate to say it, but that Rosie would be the one that would get chosen more often in this house, because she's so easy. I get that. You take the easy one. Yeah. But you know what? What I learned on this trip was that the difficult one can become the easy one.
You know what? I think, especially if you can focus on just the one.
Yeah. So, okay. So if we don't have any more questions or comments other than Michelle's, which was great, we will let everybody go, and we will be back next week. Not sure what we're talking about, but we'll be back for that. And everybody have a great week, and go take your dog out somewhere fun for a short period of time, and figure out what skills your dog needs, or what your dog has that works out in the world. Sometimes it's just good to know what they have that works out there in the world. So go out, take them out, have a good time, and let us know how it goes. All right. Thanks, Celeste. Take care, everybody. See you next week.